Believe me,
Greetings and welcome to Mount Olympus. I am Hercules Invictus, and today on Hercules and the Space Gods, I'm proud to bring you Disclosure Network New York with the one, the only, the legendary Nick Curto.
haha, thank you, Hercules, for that amazing introduction. It's just like I wrote it for you. But thank you so much. You're a dear friend and the best producer anybody could ever have. And you
And you're
deserve to hear
a
that.
phenomenal person.
Okay, so here we go. Nick Curto and Disclosure Network New York. And now, 28 years ago, everybody told me, why am I bothering with starting a group that investigates UFO and ET phenomenon? And I said, I believe that this is something we really need to know more about. And we know almost nothing at all. So we started the group. I co-founded it with a dear friend of mine. And she and I started it 28 years ago. And we've always had either one or more get-togethers here in Manhattan for the group. Sometimes we meet face to face in the West Village in a rented room, and sometimes we do it by Zoom. We have Zoom meetings the last few years. I have worldwide people now from even Hawaii and Europe that are members of my Disclosure Network New York. I could not be prouder of this group. It is one of the most wonderful things that's ever happened to my life. I've met so many amazing people, scientists, people who've had major experiences with either photographing UFOs or seeing UFOs up close or more. And it's been an amazing journey. Now, tonight, I'm so excited because one of the people that I consider truly a hero in the disclosure movement is an amazing man. You're going to hear a lot about his journey of his own life. He's an amazing guy. Uh, Major George Filer III, welcome, sir. Welcome.
Well, thanks for having me.
It's such a pleasure. I was hoping that at some point we could do an interview with you. As you know, an hour is not going to touch all that you've been through, but at least it will be a good start. And George, I want to ask you right away, um, when was the first time that you felt as though there was some sort of phenomenon, there was something you didn't quite understand that was going on? How old were you, or what was that like?
Well, I was about 5 years old, and I was riding my tricycle next to my house, actually, which was an apartment building. We lived on the second floor, and I looked across the street, which was a park, and I saw a bunch of like birds flying in the sky, and they all came down and landed in their tree. And as I looked at the tree, it seemed to take on a structural shape. As I'm riding along with my tricycle, with my fellow who lived at the first floor, I lived on the second floor, we saw a man standing in the trees dressed in a uniform like the pilots wore prior to World War II, but it was all black, and he seemed to be a very handsome man, and he pointed across the street at this structure that had landed there and asked us if we would like to go see it. And I'm with John Fitzgerald as my buddy, and we decided, yes, we would go across the street into the park and go with this man. Now, we're only about 5 years old, so we have to be careful crossing the street. And went over to the craft, and it's about 25 feet in diameter. It looked like stainless steel. And he asked us if we wanted to go inside, and we said sure. We went inside, And to me, it looked like a stainless steel kitchen. Now, this was just at the time of the World War II starting, so I thought it was some kind of a military, aircraft, some kind of a special new device. I really didn't think much about aliens or anything like that. And inside, it seemed a little larger than it was on the outside, but there was no controls like you would expect to see in a pilot's plane. And he just showed us around a little bit, and we left. Now, about a week later, the craft comes back and lands at the same place. And this time, a lady gets out, and she kind of waves at me. I'm up on the second floor of the apartment building, and I asked my mother if I could go over and see the lady. She said, sure. Be careful crossing the street. So I crossed the street, went over to the craft, and the nice lady is there, and she was very beautiful. She had blonde hair and blue eyes and a nice figure and looked pretty much just like any other human being, maybe a little taller and a little prettier, but pretty much the same. And she invited me into the craft. Now, John didn't come with me, and I was alone in the UFO with her. And she said, the reason we've come here is that we live in a planet that is close to the center of the universe. And we have a star that is basically growing old. And when stars grow old, they have a bad habit of exploding, which would destroy our planet. So we're looking for a new planet, and Earth is one of the nicest planets in this part of the universe, and we believe we're going to come here in large numbers. And when we do, we'd like you to tell people about that. Now, it's going to be several years from now when you're older, but you will be an important person in explaining to people that UFOs are coming, that they're basically friendly, and that they will help our society. They will help us with medicine and stopping wars, and we will do away with what you call criminals. Now, I don't know if all this is true, but I remember it very distinctly. And it sounds funny, but the way I remember it most is the fact that I would go to kindergarten and I would tell, the other children what was going on, that I was seeing this lady from outer space, and she's very beautiful, and that what was going to happen in the future is as she was telling me. And the kids in the class would normally hold up their teddy bear or something and tell a story about their teddy bear, but here I was talking about spaceships and beautiful ladies, and I was really very popular in my kindergarten class, telling the kids all these stories. And it sounds funny, but that's how I remember that fact that I was in that craft. Now, was it all dreams? I can't say for sure, but those beings that look like us are here now and are still flying their craft around, and I'm sure the government is going to start releasing some of the pictures of these roughly 25-foot craft. And through the years, I had experiences where one of my best friends, Peter Dreyer, father was a German scientist who left Germany just before World War II. And he had a place in Florida, and we went from Illinois to Florida. And he met this lady who was part of the project to bring scientists from Germany who had worked on rockets and so on, and UFOs. And she was with us and explaining to us about how she had seen UFOs flying in Germany and in the United States. And then when they went up on a mountain, well, I say a mountain, but a high hill, to look at the UFO, they could see these little green men picking up rocks and so on. And once the beings of the UFO saw them, they flew away. Well, she said we went back and we told the American officers about seeing this UFO, and they said, no, you didn't see it, that's all imagination. But she says, I saw it, and I, based on my ability as a scientist brought here by America, I know that I saw UFOs and that they really exist. Well, later on, I joined the Air Force, and I was at Waco, Texas, going to flight school, and my brother was getting married. And once you're in flight school, you're not supposed to leave for any reason, but my brother was getting married, and a good friend of his was a congressman. The congressman sent a letter to my headquarters asking that I come home for the weekend for the wedding. And they let me go, and I went home for the wedding, and my brother Bill was married. And I came back, and whenever they needed a courier or a dirty job, the name of Filer came up immediately. Now, the part I wanted to tell the public was that they sent me to 12th Air Force as a courier, and which is they take something and they tie it to your wrist, and you carry this package tied to your wrist in a baggage type thing. When I went to 12th Air Force, I said to the fellow that I'm handing the information to, what do you do? And he says, well, I'm in charge of American UFOs that fly in and out of this area in Texas at Gray Air Base, which is part of the Gray Army Air Base. And I said, UFOs, that sounds familiar. I know something about UFOs. Well, in any case, I got my past flight school, and my first assignment was to England and flying tankers in England. So one day we're up over the North Sea refueling, and we get a call from London Control asking us to investigate a UFO over the Stonehenge area. And we just finished refueling some of the fighters, and we turned around and we were at like 33,000 feet, and they said the craft was about 1,000 feet over the Stonehenge area. So we decided to, go as fast as we can, put our jets at high speed, and we're descending, and all of a sudden there's all these red lights and stuff going on the aircraft. We're going past the red line on the aircraft. We're going too fast, and it starts shaking.
Wow.
Fortunately, we slowed down and nothing really happened, but I'm sure that people chasing UFOs may die because they fly too fast to try to catch them. Well, in any case, when we got about 30 miles out of Stonehenge area, which is in the southern central part of England, I got the UFO on radar. And the radar was exceedingly large, of a very large object. And we, could this be the UFO? Now, we used to fly over Scotland, and the large bridges there, the Firth of Forth Railroad Bridge was a mile long, and on our radar, the UFO looked as big as the Firth of Forth Bridge. We got about 20 miles or so from it, and the UFO, we could see the UFO off in the distance, and it was like a ship at sea, like you see a big, aircraft carrier or something at sea. You can see that it's very large, with lots of holes on the side and so on, with lights coming out. And as we got closer, it went up into space, just like the launch of one of our rockets. We told London Control, it just took off and went into space. And they say, well, you can continue with your mission now. Apparently it's gone. So I didn't think much about it, but we wrote it up in the log and told people at the tanker squadron that we'd seen these UFO, and they said, well, you must be drunk or something. And I said, no, it's a real thing. Well, that weekend, Prince Philip was speaking at the Officers Club, and all the officers were expected to attend, and we all get dressed up in our fancy uniforms with bow ties and everything, and we had dinner as Prince Philip was speaking. As he finished his speech, he said, I want to speak to the crew that saw the UFO earlier in the week, which was us. So we sat down with him for cigars and dessert, and had about an hour and a half discussion with Prince Philip, who is the Queen's husband. And he was a big ufologist. He knew more about UFOs than I certainly knew at the time. And I asked him how he happened to be interested in UFOs. He says, well, my uncle, Lord Mountbatten, is the head of the Navy in England, and he was moving his whole fleet of ships in the Mediterranean, and the UFOs came over the fleet and buzzed the whole group. And that was his first sighting of UFOs. And after that, they landed at his home, and then he became the last viceroy of India. And in India, he apparently saw lots of UFOs and know a lot about them.
George, did he say that there was communication of some sort? Did they communicate with him in some way, and what were they saying? Was there anything like that?
He said something about one of the Navy enlisted men who he trusted had seen the UFO up close and talked a little bit to the alien and had told him firsthand what he had seen and so on at his home. Now, that may have been a way not to say that he was the one who saw him, but in any case, that's the story that we were told.
Right, right. Some have said that it's not verbal communication, words, but their thoughts. Clearly, there was communication with the ETs, and then when they started thinking in those terms, they would think the thoughts, and the beings would understand that, and that was a way of communicating. I think
Right.
that's quite amazing.
They have an ability to reach into your mind, so to speak, and tell you what they're thinking. And they apparently can read what you are thinking as well.
I've heard that many times, so that seems to be the real story to that. Yes.
I, uh,
No, go ahead, please.
Number of times I chased UFOs over England, and I was flying C-141 aircraft out of McGuire later on in my career, and I had seen them. And since I had seen a UFO, frequently after a flight, we would go to the officers' club and usually have a few beers, and there'd be 10 or 15 officers there, and I would usually try to say, have you fellas seen a UFO? And I would say roughly 1 out of 8 officers had seen them or chased them. In other words, the average pilot or flyer in the Air Force has seen them.
I think everybody has said the same thing that once they've had the first experience, once they have actually seen with their own
Right,
eyes something that is definitely not a plane, it's not a balloon, it's not some sort of bird, it was a vehicle, it was something, and it wasn't from here being on this planet.
right.
Their
Just
whole view changes, as you know.
right,
All of a sudden, okay, wow, we really have to think about the fact that we are not alone, and we certainly aren't.
right. Well, most of these people have seen them, had them on radar, and often used gun camera film to film them, and so on. There's a lot of data that exists. Uh, well, I went to Vietnam, and there was UFOs over Vietnam, and we think some actually sunk some of our light patrol boats, but they were firing at the patrol boats, and they seemed to be able to turn what's fired at them around and send it back to you. Most people don't realize it, but they have tremendous capabilities. I've clocked them at 100,000 miles an hour,
Whoa.
and and they're just far in advance of anything that we have, frankly. Although we're back engineering them, and I feel that we're learned the secrets of the anti-gravity and so on, and so that we have some that are very exceptional. Obviously, they're not much is told about it, but Lockheed and different companies have certainly back engineered some of the crashed ones. And I spent a lot of time with Greer, Dr. Greer, and he says that he has a picture from 1924 of an alien being surgically examined. My point is that they've been around for a long time,
Absolutely true.
and probably were here before we were. As a matter of fact, the lady in the UFO, while I was there, was telling me that, in effect, she's our ancestors from a long time ago. That at least the ones that look like us. Now there's quite a few other aliens who are also visiting us who look very different. The Greys and the reptilian types and so on.
Well, when you think of our own planet and you think of just the sea, most of the sea has not been explored, as you know.
Oh,
Most
yes.
of our sea on this planet, we have no idea what's down there. It's a fraction of what's really there that we know about. And as far as diversity, look at the amount of animals and birds and all the diversifications. Look at the sea with octopus and fish that glow, that can emit at will electric. I mean, think
Right.
of all that. And that's just our little planet Earth. Can you imagine with the billions and the word billions of galaxies and all the planets that are associated and moons? Uh, and it's like we're a little tiny planet, like one little pebble of sand in a huge uh, seashore of sand. That's the odds. So, of
Right.
course, we're not alone. Of course, there's incredible diversity in the universe.
Right. One of the things I was going to mention is that after Vietnam, well, in Vietnam, I briefed General Brown, who became chairman of the Joint Chief of Staff, but I used to brief him about UFOs, and he publicly declared that, there was some in Vietnam, that kind of thing. When I returned back to the United States, I was at Military Airlift Command, and I briefed four-star generals every day for, 4 years there, and probably 10 years altogether that I briefed four-star generals, and I had very high clearances, and I could brief certain information to them. I didn't have the highest clearances, and as a matter of fact, I would brief the generals with our air crews seeing UFOs. So I went to the Pentagon to get some pictures of them to put in my briefing, which often had congressmen and other generals or, any case, they told me that they had a whole vault full of UFO pictures, but I wasn't cleared enough to have them, and that I should go back to Scott Air Force Base and talk to General Canton to give me the clearance. Now my boss, Bob Woods, had the top clearance for the whole base, for the whole unit, which is, by the way, is Air Force One and Two and about 1,000 other aircraft. All these big four-engine aircraft that you see belong to us. In any case, they told me, get a letter from General Canton and you'll get the clearance. So I wrote out the letter, gave it to my boss, Colonel Dugan, and he tore it up.
You tore it up. Oh no.
Well, in any case, they said you can get anything you need from Bob Woods, who was my immediate superior. And for 4 years, doing these briefings, I got the highest ratings that anybody can get in the Air Force. The top ratings from Bob Woods.
Mhm.
And when the story is, when I came up for colonel, I was passed over. As you see, I'm still a major. And I called up personnel. I said, I don't understand why I was passed over. I have a master's degree. I have finished 2 or 3 of the top Air Force schools, and I got the top ratings. And they said, well, let me look at your record. That's funny that you weren't promoted. They said, you got a big UFO written on your personnel file. And he
Really,
says,
really. Now, would that be an indication of something good or bad? I don't
something
follow.
bad that you'll never get promoted.
Isn't that awful? I mean, really, that is such a wrong move there. It's
I,
what,
I wonder
boy,
with the new situation if I'm eligible now.
I wonder if that's still the case or not. I wonder. I hope it's not. I hope that we're finally facing the truth and saying we really have a lot that we've been keeping from the public. And I feel personally, and my group feels it's dangerous to keep this kind of information from the public.
Well, it is. Now, from Scott Air Force Base, I was transferred to McGuire Air Force Base to fly more.
Mhm.
So I've got some 5,000 hours, under my skin, and I was transferred up to 21st Air Force in intelligence, and I was the deputy head of intelligence for 21st Air Force, which is significant because one day I came in to brief the generals about 4 o'clock in the morning, and I'm accosted in there's a secret room, kind of like you have to have at least a secret clearance even to get in the room, but that's where the generals are briefed. And they said that an alien had been killed and was on the runway at McGuire, and they think he was killed by a Army sergeant over on Fort Dix, and had left Fort Dix and made it over to McGuire. There's just a fence in between the two bases, and he was found on the runway. Well, in any case, that alien was found by a Air Force policeman and actually a sergeant in the police, state police, happened to be there. They were looking for the body of this alien, and he was there for, I don't know, an hour or so. This has happened in January 18th, 1978, and it's a cold, cold night, and he's standing out on the runway looking at an alien when about 20 men came in, all in uniform and all in high ranks, and told him to shove off, that they didn't need him anymore. Well, in any case, he was transferred. First he went to Wright Patterson and told he didn't see an alien and to forget everything he saw. And the next day he was transferred to Japan.
Just get
And
rid of him. Just get him out of here before
that's
he
right.
doesn't.
Anybody who saw anything was
Yeah.
transferred.
Yep, yep. That doesn't surprise me, and it's sad. It really is sad because this is the kind of information that people need to know, and it's been, as you well know. I mean, certainly you were in such amazing areas, and with your many years on the service, so you were seeing and hearing things. And did you ever have to sign something that you would never say anything like that?
Well, I found out about him later on.
Hmm.
Matter of fact, I walked down to brief the general in his office, and we would have a code book of above top secret information that we would, I was in intelligence, that we would give to the general every morning after the briefing, and he would read it, but he's not allowed to say anything about it, and I'm not allowed to say anything about it in case the room is, you know, somebody's listening. Well, in any case, the head of air police is down there, and he comes out and tells me that he briefed the general about the alien and that I don't have to brief him. So that morning I go to the photographic office where I often did, so that I have, well, they had a screen, four screens that had to be filled every morning, and they have like a map of where the airplane is and the airplane and what happened to it, and if there's UFOs or aliens or just Russians or whatever. And so in any case, I got the lab and they said, "Oh, you got to see the pictures we got of this alien." And he handed me the pictures, and I started pulling them out of this envelope. And with that, the head of the photographic lab came over and grabbed the pictures away from me, so I didn't get to see him. But I understand that he looked like a typical gray.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. That's one of the grays are certainly one of the species that have been reported many, many times, and of course others too. Very humanoid. I say ETs, humanoid
Right,
visitors too, and like you described before. And there's many reports like that. So these are not isolated situations. And lots of times, what you had said before, I've heard other reports talking about our visitors, our brothers and sisters, and saying, in one case, stop nuclear testing, stop anything with bombs and
right,
nuclear because you're playing with fire and your planet could be destroyed. And we will give you advanced technology if you will stop doing. Have you ever heard anything like that?
right. I After I retired, I became a field investigator in MUFON, and then essentially the state director, and I would interview a lot of the abductees. And I will say that it was very pleasant because all the abductees that I interviewed were very good looking.
Okay.
that that the aliens would abduct them usually at night, but sometimes in their cars or whatever. Often PhDs and scientists and in other words, they pick people with brains and good looks, and they are what we feel as mating with them to develop the aliens so that they look better and are smart as well.
Um, you know, Another part of that, what you just said, is that as we all know, living our lives, that there are people who look wonderful and that they can be trusted, and they're not. And there can be other people who look like they might be a little suspicious or shifty, and yet when you get to know them, they're really wonderful and you can trust them. So you have to always think about that when you're talking about looks, especially with our brothers and sisters or whoever else is visiting us,
Right,
that you have to really take time to really understand who or what is there and what's in back of it. Don't you think so?
right. Now it appears that at least the aliens that look like us are spreading onto the society, and you probably won't even recognize the fact that they're there. except they're very intelligent, usually high, very good looking. Uh, Allegedly, there's some working at the Mayo Clinic, upgrading our medical profession. Some are working at MIT and working on some of their projects there. And they say the biggest problem they have is with the average American finding out that they're working with an alien.
I got that. Yeah, yeah, copy that. George, I
Uh,
wanted to ask you right now about your amazing the Filer files on the internet. I've seen it many times. I want to compliment you and the people who work on that. It is an extraordinary work
well,
showing
it's just
the
me.
really, really, no, I didn't know that. It's extraordinary what you've
Well,
done.
I have a webmaster, but
Right.
he does the web part of it, but not the
Now,
writing
how
of it.
long has that been going on? When did you start that?
1999.
God bless you. Wow, that's a long time. And it's extraordinary what's there. I recommend anybody who's looking at this program or listening to it, take a look at is it www the Filer files? Is that how it's
Well, the name of the website is the National UFO Center.com. NationalUFOCenter.com. And it
.com.
says, and it talks about violence files in there. And
Well,
there's
it's an incredible work in progress, and it's so filled with so
like,
many good reports, photographs, and incredible stories, and it's really it's legendary. You know that it's a legendary thing in the UFO community. I just want to
well,
compliment you on that.
it's opened a lot of doors for me. I've met a lot of astronauts
It's
and
really quite a wonderful work.
key people in various positions. And well, I tell you one story.
Sure.
A Navy friend of mine was flying these sub chasers, chasing the Soviet subs in the Atlantic Ocean. And I don't know if people know this, but like 10 Soviet subs would be off our coast all the time. This is in 1989. And they would stay on station about 3 months, and the planes would fly over and see what they're doing and so on. And this one time in early 1989, I don't know if I said the right word, 1989, they noticed that what normally happened is a new set of subs would come and the initial sub would go back home. Well, in 1989, the subs didn't go back home. And instead of being like 10 subs, there's 20 submarines in the latest Russian type submarines, each which has about 16 nuclear missiles on board. So 16 times 20. And apparently they also moved in the Gulf of Mexico and in the Pacific Ocean with submarines. And this fellow happened to be on this plane and determined that and notified the Navy that there was something going on. And about the same time, Philadelphia submarine has also noticed some subs further north of New Jersey. Well, anyhow, they figured out there's like 20, 25 Soviet subs off our coast, which could launch I don't know, 300 missiles or whatever, and hit almost all the targets in the United States in 15 minutes.
George, let me ask you a question. I have heard that before. That's most people do not know that. Do you think that the United States has subs all around Russia? Were we doing the same thing?
Well, we have submarines near Russia as well.
We do. Okay, so it's
Okay,
yeah.
our nuclear submarines. Well, in any case, uh, we were warned to send out all kinds of ships and planes and everything to let the Soviet Union know that we know that they're there.
Right, of course, of course.
Well, with that, they turned around and went home and did not attack us.
Wow.
Now, if you're aware of this, in 1990, and actually started in 89, the Soviet Union was in trouble, and this trouble was occurring by alien, well, I say alien, well, by UFOs. And in 1991, I talked to two Soviet KGB officers who asked to come and see me, and they said that the aliens were attacking their key installations in the Soviet Union, and that at least one alien had gone and talked to Mikhail Gorbachev and explained that it was no longer time for the Soviet Union to be one of the great powers on Earth, and they were told to disable themselves. And they gave up 15 countries, Poland, Lithuania, all the NATO countries, East Germany, and so on, and the Ukraine and other parts of the Soviet Union were all dissipated. And
Wow.
the
Incredible,
point,
incredible what's going on. Thank you for sharing that. George, I want to, before we continue, we're almost out of time. I knew this was going to be amazingly fast, and it has been. Uh, but we're coming up on Saturday, June 13th, from 2 o'clock to 7 o'clock. We're going to have something here in Manhattan called the UFO UAP ET Over Conference, Courage Over Fear, Transparency Over Secrecy, and Progress Over Stagnation. And I'm hosting that with my group, Disclosure Network New York, and we've got some incredible speakers that will be there for this conference coming up. And also, one of the highlights of it's going to be what we're going to call the awards presentation. And we've picked three people that we feel as though deserve to get honored for their long service towards truth of disclosure. We have Dr. Stephen Greer. We have Major George Filer III, you, sir, and we have Daniel Sheehan, Esquire. And boy, all three of you are such heroes as far as trying to get the truth out there that we certainly desperately need to have done. And all three of you have done lifelong, amazing work. And we decided, you bet we have to honor you. So we've made little plaques, and we're going to give them to you, or if you can't make it for distance, we're going to mail it to you, of course. I designed it, and I think you're going to love it. And also, Sheehan and Dr. Greer are probably going to do videos also accepting that award, and we're going to run those on a screen at this coming event. And I just wanted to say, sir, you certainly deserve it, and it is my pleasure and honor to interview you. I hope that we can do another interview really soon because there's many more questions I would love to run
yeah.
by you.
Well, thank you for the plaque.
Absolutely, you deserve every bit of that.
We,
So with that, I'm going to say this is Nick Curto for Disclosure Network New York. Keep your mind open. search for the truth, demand the truth of disclosure from our government and other governments. We deserve to know what's really going on. Much love to everyone out there, and I mean out there everywhere. Much love.
Right.
For a very informative show. Thank you, George. You've been a great guest and gave me a lot to think about.
Okay. Thanks for having me.
Take care, everybody. Good night. Much
Good
love.
night.
Good night.